What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt Toville with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Roy Jones Jr., Oleksandr Usyk, and Joseph Parker. You know, Joseph Parker is in line to fight Oleksandr Usyk next, according to everyone, right? The WBO and everyone else. And this is what Roy Jones Jr. had to say. He said, Parker is skilled, but is still no match for Usyk. Okay, we know Parker is on a 6-fight win streak, including Bakali, Zhang, and Wilder. But the Hall of Fame Roy Jones says, I don't see anyone beating Usyk at this point. And let me counterpunch. I think that's a fair assessment based on what Usyk's done. But I will say this. I think between Usyk fighting Danny Dubois and Usyk fighting Joseph Parker, that is not the same fight. It's a different challenge. It's a different type of fight. I don't see a knockout like you saw with Danny Dubois. I think a lot of factors came as a result of that knockout that had everything to do with, well, both fighters, but I think a lot had to do with the idea of Daniel thinking that he was Colossus and can take shots from bigger guys and not really realizing that he's in there with someone that knows exactly who he is. That's a pugilist, historian, okay? He studies boxing, Usyk does. And he knows certain things about fighters, okay? One thing about Usyk is his prep is almost like Batman, the detective. You know what I mean? He's that type of dude that writes stuff down if he's at a fight and he's going to fight someone like Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. You think he didn't study those guys first? You think he wasn't there taking notes? He was taking notes. Okay. And if he wasn't taking actual notes, he was taking mental notes of, okay, all right, okay, I think I see he shuffles after he's pressured and he shuffles always to the left instead of to the right. You know, things like that they take note of. Okay, that's why they were there a lot of times. You think Usyk was in Madison Square Garden where AJ was upset by Andy Ruiz just to see AJ fight? No, he was there because he was going to fight AJ. He had his projections to fight AJ even back in 2019. And he didn't fight him until 2 years later after he did a lot in the sport after that. Right? So, yeah, you know, fighting Usyk is always going to be a job, you know, and with Roy Jones Jr., Roy Jones is like, hey, I don't see anybody beating him at this point. That's a fair thing to say. But I'll say this, we'll see. Because we have to see how these fights, including something that Roy Jones Jr. said himself. He was like, listen, we got to see these fights actually happen. You know, because they said the same thing about Floyd back then. Like, oh, well, he'll beat Keith or, oh, he'll beat Erislandy Lara. I mean, well, we never saw those fights to see how they will unravel. Okay. See, the thing is, sometimes it's not all about it's not about winning or losing. It's about how you win and how you lose. You know, if you win in a sense that, hey, that was a pretty tough fight. That's just like saying, oh, Floyd will beat Cotto before even fighting Cotto. Wouldn't you like to see how he was able to defeat Cotto? In defeating Cotto from Mayweather, just using him as an example, that wasn't an easy fight. Yeah, he won because he was the superior defensive fighter and, you know, and a lot of mistakes that he felt and he admitted that he did in that fight. But that fight was a very tough fight. I mean, he was bleeding all over the place. He had busted his nose. That jab was piercing him. The body shots, you know, the in the trenches, he had to dig deep to fight Cotto. But he still beat Cotto, but we still saw it. We saw how he was able to do it. Just because you had a hard day's work don't mean you can't get through it, but it still has to be done. And I think Joseph Parker is one of those type of fights that it has to be done, and it is a hard day's work. Okay, so you guys tell me what you think of Roy Jones Jr. stating that Joseph Parker is good, but he doesn't see anybody beating Oleksandr Usyk at this point. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys been Counterpunch.